Well, welcome back to the shop. Next step, getting the drivetrain back together and out of the basement. As you can see, the chassis over there is all ready to roll. Ended up redoing all the front knuckles and stuff. It's all been blasted, painted, prepped. Everything's reassembled there. So chassis is looking pretty good. There's a little bit left, like fuel lines, but it kind of goes hand in hand with drivetrain. Same way, tub is finally all buffed and polished. All the other miscellaneous parts are done. The hardtop fiberglass we still got to do, but I kind of got to make room in the shop, and I got to free up the rotisserie. So hardtop's left for paint, but that's pretty minor, and it's a different color. It's going to be a white versus the cream. But today, looking to get the drivetrain back assembled, get the trans, clutch, flywheel, block all mated back together, and hopefully dunk it in the chassis and have that as a full roller with the drivetrain back in it. From there we can work on the Holley Sniper install. That'll be interesting. Whoa, buddy. So going to be a little bit of work once we get this in the chassis. Got to bend up some fuel lines to snake around. Got to fabricate a little bit to get that Sniper to fit. And we're going to fiddle around a little bit with the Holley distributor, trying to make that work with the 2F. They sell one for the GM 235 6-cylinder. I think it's a 235, but it's a little bit off, so I had to do a little bit of fab work to make that adjust to fit the 2F, which is a little unique. But otherwise, got everything laid out. Going to walk through, get this puppy slam back together, and hopefully have her back in shortly. In the meantime, it's going to be nice to let that paint cure. You know, the auto paints take a little bit of time to harden up, so it's going to work out well to spend a little bit of time on the drivetrain and chassis. It was kind of my intent. The tub and all the doors, hardtops, fenders, they're all been curing for a week or two now, so it just gives them a little more chance to harden up before you assemble it. When you assemble it soft, it can be a little bit tricky. Anyway, enough yakking. That's where we're at. Let's get to it. Boop, boop. So block was all cleaned and prepped. I was pretty lucky. I ended up picking up some oversized pistons when they were around. They've been very hard to find. They've still been very hard to find. They don't make them. I think it's 76 to 78, so it's a very short window. They ran a dome top piston. So you can see they got a convex surface up on the top. They only ran them for a few years, and not many people like to make them anymore. Typically they like to make the flat tops, but you need a different head. You can get the newer 2F head and find the flat top pistons, but I managed to find some dome tops in these are 20 over or half mil, and we were able to bore this block out. I did need to get freshened up. I could not find 30 overs. Technically 30 overs would have been the correct, but the 20 overs half mil worked pretty good. There's one cylinder that has about an inch of a ridge left. It's one on the end. Where are you, you little feller? As you can tell, it's not much. I found it before. Oh, there it is. That corner. Can I tip it? Yeah. So if you can see right there, there's about an inch of just a real minor whiff on this number 6 cylinder that the 20 over didn't clear out. Every other cylinder laid out real nice. But yeah, it's literally about an inch long, and you can just barely catch it. That we couldn't get out with the 20 over. Obviously, ideally, you would have went 30 over. 30 over would have cleaned that up. That is the only cylinder that had that, and it's literally about a an inch of a wear mark there. Given that we could not find any other pistons, 30 over, 40 over, they were pretty much unobtainium at the time, and they still kind of are. I did manage to track down a set of 40 overs the other day, but it's kind of way too late for that. But that little nugget isn't going to hurt anything. Everything else cleaned up pretty nicely, and we got them on hand. Picked up some Hastings rings. They're generally pretty well recommended in the 2F world. I'm not sure what ones came with the ITM pistons. These might be NPR rings. They are made in Japan, but they are unlabeled. So I was going to poke around a little bit. I'm still going to use the Hastings. They're a known quantity. But it was interesting that those rings that came with the pistons were actually made in Japan. Otherwise, got everything laid out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Everything's in order. Got our main caps. So I think we got everything we need. We're going to have to go through, check our ring gaps. So do all that jazz, and we got to go through and plastic gauge all our main and rod bearings just to make sure everything's kosher. So we'll have to do a little bit of fiddly work there to make sure everything's good. From there we can start plunking things back together. Camshaft is getting replaced, so that's a new camshaft there. Crank measured out correctly and it's all polished up, so that's good to go. Head was decked, valves were cleaned up. The exhaust valves were replaced, they needed a little bit of love. So we got new exhaust valves on our head. All the valve seats were touched up as needed, and it's got all new valve seals, so that'll be good. Obviously got to clean up the old oil filter housing. Otherwise, new seals everywhere, new gaskets everywhere. I do have a, get out of the way, friend. I do have a one-piece oil pan gasket, so I'm going to flip him out. Managed to track this feller down, so he's joined at the ends versus that multi-piece one. You can track that. It's easier to find some of this stuff from forklift places because they ran the 2F with forklifts. So that's where I found that guy. Otherwise, that's most of everything we need. I'm going to start dunking in those main bearings, checking those, and dunking in the rod bearings, checking those, make sure everything's happy, and then we can start plunking things together. Going to start with the rods. I got the crank laid out, matches the way the block is sitting, so snoots forward, flywheels this way. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Got everything laid out that way. Don't know which bearings are which. Let's see what they got. Those look to be our boys. These should be our main bearings. Yep. Go set these aside for now. We'll do those sagging. You can go in there. So just dunked in the new bearings on the number 1. Starting on this end. There is a little T for the TEQ. That faces rearward, so this is the rear, this is flywheel side. Number side, stamp both are down. So this little feller can go in there. So plunk that guy out. Just got to measure it against the gauge. It's about a 0.38 millimeters. It needs to be 20 to 44. right? Yeah, 020 for 044. So we're right in the middle of the band, which is good. Fairly expected. New bearings, crank measured out, but it's good to check them. Don't really need any surprises. So number one is done. We'll just jam through the rest of them. Make sure everything's good there. From there, we'll throw the crank in, but let's get the rods checked out first. Well, ran through the set. They're all generally pretty much where they need to be. Number 3, which is why I had it flipped upside down, is kind of up right on the upper end. I don't think it's going to be any sort of a problem, and not to expect it either. This is the original crank, 123,000 on it. So there's a little bit of wear. New bearings help. It'll put it kind of back in spec. But yeah, I'm just kind of just right on the tickling on the upper end, but it'll do. I got to do the same on the main bearings. Throw her in the block, see how she does. I'm guessing it's going to be kind of similar. Where did I put my main bearings? But we'll check it just to make sure. Oh, they're in the block. Otherwise, onward. So, similar to the rods, checking the mains. Got to dunk the bearings in. They're all a different size, 1, 2, 3, 4. They each get bigger as you go through. 1 and 4 have oil passages only on the side, so make sure you get that feller in the right side. Edges. There we go. That was correct. It just felt a little funny. He just felt a little funny. This one's got a number 3's got a lip, small hole, big hole. And just like number 1, number 4's only got the oil holes on the block side. So you kind of want those. Otherwise you're going to have a bad day. Well, ain't that purty? Number 4, number 3, arrow goes to the front. Front has the balancer. Zoink. Arrow to the front. There she goes. Oh, back part she comes. Let's see how the old plastic gauge looks. Check our clearances. Clearance. Well, welcome back, welcome back. Cutting forward a little bit, had to regroup. Did test fit the original clevites, new clevite main bearings. For whatever reason, they measured out loose. So there was something interesting there. Double checked the crank. It passes all measurements, which confirms what the machine shop said. When they checked it, it didn't have any run out, and when you rotate it, all the plastic gauge checks would do the same. So it doesn't seem like there's like a flex in the crank. And interestingly enough, if you put the original bearings in, the factory ones marked standard, they passed. They're worn. So there's something funky going on with that original set of clevites, most likely. I was gone for a week, hence I am much more tan. I was out volunteering at Oshkosh, the air show here in Wisconsin. In the meantime, ordered up a spare set of clevites to see if I just got a wonky one. And right before I left, I managed to also run across a kind of battered box, new old stock, but they're still in the sealed packaging, pair of Repcos, also in the standard size. So we'll give those a go and see if it's a manufacturer type thing. It is close tolerances, so we'll see what we got. These are cheap enough that it was worth just snagging the extra set and have them on hand. So when I came back from being away from the shop for a week, had new parts. Ended up snagging a extra set of rings as well, which thankfully came pretty quick. The Hastings rings that I test fit before I left, they ended up having a ring gap of like, I want to say, anyway, the ring gap was too wide. I don't remember the exact measurements. I think it was 61 mil, 0.61 mil. But anyway, the ring gap was wide. If you look around, it seems like Hastings can just do that. They tend to err on the wide side. So I ended up ordering another set of rings that we can file and get closer. If we need to, we can run the wide rings. That'll be what it'll be, but we'll see what we got there. But first of all, we're going to crank through, see if we can get some mains that fit. So onward. Alrighty, so nipped the pack out of the Repco. Interestingly enough, it does have the same markings as the clevites, pretty much the exact same stamping, so they're different than the OEM. But oddly enough, the Repcos are standards, but they're 1123Bs versus 1123s for this particular one. This is the thrust bearing. I don't know if any of the other ones have a different. Yeah, so these are all 1123Bs, which is interesting. The part number is still standard, so we'll see what they do. Hopefully they tighten up a little bit on the tolerances. That would be what we were looking for. If not, we've got another set of the same clevites. We're going to push these out of the way just so we don't mix them up. Although they have a different part number, so not too worried there. And the original ones are a little used. Get out the way. Well, those are about the same. We'll run that other set of clevites in just to see if that one's any any different. And past that, we may be machining this crank a little bit. Well, battery died midway through there. Probably got a decent time lapse, flippy flopping and everything. Between mixing and matching from the 3 sets of bearings I had, I think we've got a winner where things sit pretty darn good. They're on the looser end versus the tighter end of the range, but they all look like they should do the deed, which is good. So I think we've got a match. I ended up using the 2 middle ones out of the Repco, and then the 2 outers were out of the original set I got from Clevite. Didn't use any out of the second Clevite set. They basically ran the same as the first set, so it was kind of a wash. But all in all, I think we've got a good set of mains now, and we had a good set of rod bearings. So between the two, I think we're good to go. Now that we're done kind of fiddling away, I'm going to check those piston rings, so we're going to pull this out, flip her over, check those piston rings, get them filed if we're going to go that route, and then we'll get the cam slid back in and start putting her back together now that we've got everything kind of checked out and understood. So that's the plan. I'm going to yank this crank out just so we can clean things up and make sure everything's nice and clean under those bearings. We were kind of in and out for a little bit there. So we're going to yank the crank out, pull the bearings back out, keep them in the pairs that we got, and see if we can get those rings on the way. So on we go. This crank does not get any lighter. Well, got our rings gapped and filed, or filed and gapped, whichever you want to call it. They're the right dimensions. Was about 92 trips back and forth to the ring filer over there in the vise, so I didn't really film it. You know, it was a lot of give her a few turns of the crank and dunk her in the cylinder, which was behind me here, and measure them out. Got them all gapped nice and tight. Not too tight, not too loose, kind of middle of the road, but it's better than what the Hastings came out of the box for the 20 overs. So feeling a little better there. I think we could have got away with the other ones. They were 0.61 millimeter, and basically you're looking for a max of like 0.38 typically, which is more like that 0.16 thou. Anywho, they're better. So we got our rings gapped, deburred, so everything's looking good there. All our main bearings check out, so we're looking good there. All our rod bearings check out, so we're finally looking good there. And we've got these fellers in order. There's probably ones you can see better. Actually, 3 and 4 got out of order. Now we got them in order. So there's number 5, number 6, etc. There's the T markings are all up. They all face forward or aft. I don't remember one way or the other. But anyway, basically, oil hole in the connecting rod, needs to face this way. Notch in the piston needs to face a certain way. So you got to line those guys up. First we got to slam the rings on nicely. So we'll spring all those rings on each piston. Get that whole stack on. Plenty of rings to get on there. Just slow, steady work. Once we get that done, we can get these connecting rods back on the pin, torque those down, and we'll have 6 nice piston assemblies ready to go back in their corresponding holes. Just a good job to tackle. I think that's probably where I'll get to today, because it is getting close to dinner time. Not quite there yet, but if I can get all these piston assemblies smashed back together the way they're supposed to be, that'll tee things up nicely tomorrow to dunk the cam in, because it's kind of missing right now. She's still sitting there over on the bench. So dunk the cam in, we can dunk the crank in, and then we can dunk the pistons in and be in a little bit better shape at having an engine that sort of does the rotatey thing. So I'm going to probably set you in the tripod, start dunking these pistons together, and see where we get. Onward. Well, just jumped ahead a little bit. Another one of those jobs where you kind of had to run back and forth. I needed to use the vise or the pin to hold it to torque those fellers down. But we've got 6 pistons, 6 rods, all our bearings good to go. One last sweep of the double check. So the piston notch is down on all of these guys. So it's facing down, and the T is facing up on this. There's a little baby T. T is up on the connecting rods, and the oil hole is facing forward. Forward being that way. So that should be correct. I'll check it again in the morning, but should be all assembled. Should be all torqued. So we're sitting pretty good. Definitely getting hungry. It's 6 o'clock, and I don't have any groceries in the house because I was gone for a week, so I gotta go deal with that. But this is a good place to pick it up in the morning. All the bearings, all the rod bearings are good. All the main bearings are good. Crank's ready to roll, and cam is hiding on the table over there, ready to roll. So should be able to start putting parts together and dunking her back in the block. Block will get one last clean sweep in the morning. No point doing it now. It's going to sit overnight. But we should be sitting pretty good there. Everything's been done. It's got fresh freeze plugs. We got a nice coat of paint, fresh cam bearings. One last check. Everything's looking pretty good there. So take a break for the night, back in the morning, and let's get this thing looking more like a motor again. Well, one last item before we start putting her back together. I got a new pilot bearing. Got to get the old one out. I don't have a bearing puller that'll fit that one. So we're going to try the old pack it with grease and tappy tap with a hammer with the bolt. Try and get her to shove out. Just one of those things. Good to catch it before you got everything slammed together. Not that you can't change it there. But just one of those quirks of catching things where you take a week off in the middle. Anywho, I'm going to grab the grease gun, going to pack that recess behind it full of grease. Going to make a little bit of a mess, and we'll see if we can get that to slide out and get the fresh air in there. Boink. pilot bearings out. She's all cleaned up and greases out of there. Good old hydraulic pressure did the deed. So onward. So block's cleaned up. Anything left over from our test fitting is cleared out. Degreased everything. Pressed the main bearings back in on the block side. They were pressed back in on the cap side. Crank is nice and clean. Pistons, rings are all on. We'll have to clock the rings as we put them in, but that's about it. Those should be all good to go. They're all torqued down. So, should be able to start dunking some parts together. We'll probably zip forward. There's plenty of good videos of engine rebuilding that kind of go through a lot of the details, so we'll just kind of zip through and bring her back when she's a rotating assembly. So let's get to it. Well, crank's dunked back in, caps are on, arrows are pointing forward. One last check there, everything's been torqued. These are torqued a little lower than these. Checked them, double checked them, so good there. Spins nice and smooth. Everything's been checked as far as tolerances go, so we should be good to go there. So got to snag a couple pieces of fuel hose so I can dunk them on the studs on the connecting rods. And we can start to dunk those guys in and get ourselves moving that way. Well, the battery, I heard the battery beep, and I right at the tail end there, I think it was as I was putting in number 6. But otherwise, got 6 happy new pistons, notches all face forward, that's the way they need to go. Connecting rods all face the other way, that's the way they need to go. Should be good to go there, everything turns nice and smooth. So next up, got to clean up this timing cover plate. It's going to get a new gasket. So I got to get the old one off, get that cleaned up. It'll get a little bit of the goop and get that back on. And then from there we can dunk in the new cam, because the cam gear has to slide over, and you can't get this cover on after. So we're going to get this cover cleaned up. We'll get it gasket cleaned up and make sure the block's ready to go, and then we will get her torqued down. Be right back. Well, plate's all cleaned up. Got to put a little bit of the liquid gasket on the gasket. So we'll get that smeared around, get a good coat on there. And we'll get it back on the timing cover plate, and then the other side will also get a coat. End plate going on, or on. Oh no, I need longer arms. Well, cam plate, timing cover plate is on. Everything's cleaned up pretty well. Bolts are torqued down. Set screws are staked. Those are just kind of there to center it. Cam bearings, I have some shmoo on them. Cam is also shmooed. So we should be good to go to slide that guy in. Timing mark is pointed to the cam, so we should be set up there. So we should just need to walk this guy in. Popped in a little quick. Where are you? Over there. Oh. Move, plate. Timing mark, timing mark. plate needs to rotate. Alrighty, cam's in. Crank pins back in. Time to dunk the timing cover back on. Just gotta put it on finger tight, and we'll put the balancer back on to center it. Then you can tarp it down. Alrighty, so he's facing down. Alrighty, timing cover's on, bolts are just lightly snugged up. That lets the balancer seated on that seal. We're going to let the Permatex tack up a little bit before we give the bolts one last little snug. We're going to do the same with the oil pan. Chip it away. Yoink. Nope. Yep. Time to dunk on the oil filter adapter. Just one more piece going on. Get out of the basement. Well, she's looking more like an engine again. Everything's clean. Head gasket's dropped in place. Got the centering dowels there. There is a oiling hole here that matches up with this oblong hole in the gasket. You can actually see where the old one had clearances. So that's that. So it should be in the right orientation. Sits nice and flush on the front. There is a little overhang in the back. That's how it was before. Everything's nice and clean. Everything's ready to rock. Time to go heave a cylinder head. She's a light duty one. The old block just gained a few pounds. Looks like she's sitting pretty good. It is centered on the dowel on both sides, so should be good to go there. Woofta. Yoink! What size are those? 19s? Oh yeah, buddy. Woot woot. Got the heater hose fitting to dunk back on, and the adapter for the sender, and I think one to plug, or that one might actually get used for the Holly Sniper. So I got one spare. Basically three cylinder head 10 type holes. I don't recall which one went in which slot, so I'm gonna have to go look that up. Be back and dig up some tape or goop and should be able to dunk those in, because you got to put those on before the valve cover goes on, but otherwise looking pretty good. Alrighty, jumped ahead a little bit. Thermostat water pump's on, so that's all good to go. Timing cover's on, balancer's on, oil filter adapter's on. Threw on a couple of the front engine mounts. I'm getting ready to slowly get her off the stand here. Just dunked the dipstick back in to keep junk out of the oil pan. Heads are on, so it's good and snug. Cleaned up all the rocker assembly bolts. Just got them tucked in the head. So they're holding down the fort. Next up, going to dunk in the lifters and push rods so we can get the rocker assembly back on. We'll have to do all the valve lash once we got the flywheel on. The timing marks are on the flywheel side. There's nothing up here. So it's all back here. But as soon as we get the valve assembly all in, that's when we can start to look at picking this feller off the stand. The one last piece I wanted to do while it's on the engine stand is this inspection cover for the lifters, push rods, just because you can spin her over. It's a little easier to do that gasket work when you can lay her on its side versus fighting it up vertical. So that was the last piece I wanted to get done while it was on the engine stand. And then past that, I'm going to leave the intake manifolds off until it's in the frame. I don't want to jiggle them around too much with those gaskets. They're finicky enough already with the big inline 6. They're notorious for exhaust and intake leaks. So the longer I can leave those off, there's no body on the frame, it's easy enough to get in there and do those. And there's no real need to be able to rotate. So I'm good with that. So gonna clean up the lifters, make sure there's no junk on them. We'll get them covered in schmoo, dunk them in, drop the push rods in, and then we'll throw the Moses. Guys in a hurry. And then we'll throw the Numbers back on. So onward. Okay. Yoink. Just a quickie, gonna give this valve cover a little bit of a shine, see what we can get. It's aluminum. It was bare from the factory, kind of just a matte finish, but we got the polishing wheel, needs a little love, so we'll see what we can do. Give her. Well, there she is all buttoned up. Got a piece of tape here again just to cover up that oil pressure sensor port. Reminder to put that back on. If you fire it up without that, you're going to have a bit of a mess. Leaving the manifolds off until it's in the chassis. Don't want those dangling around. They're pretty heavy, so any extra weight to peel off a little better. And those gaskets are... Alright then. Those gaskets are notoriously fiddly on those big inline sixes. So we're leaving those off so they don't get too disturbed. Got a nice clean valve cover. Gave it a quick polish. It's not perfect, but it's underneath the air cleaner and all that jazz. I don't think it was polished to begin with. It was kind of a natural aluminum, but cleaned up good. Otherwise, got a flag on the plugs. They're just finger tight, so that's another one of those reminders. So before you fire it up, snug the plugs down. Otherwise, gaskets are on, gaskets are on. Distributor, got to dunk in once the flywheel's on. Reminder for the oil filter, keep that covered up. Otherwise, everything's looking pretty good. Got the alternator bracket on, got the hooks to lift it. So I think we're in pretty good shape. That's probably where I'm going to wrap this one. Nice to have the engine all back together and buttoned up. Oh, she's a little dusty down here. But otherwise, she should be ready to go, ready to pick her off the stand, put her back on blocks, and made up with flywheel clutch transmission. Get that all together. That should be a little quicker job. Putting the block back together was a little bit slow. But should be able to get the trans on in the next episode and dunk it back in its home, which should be pretty well ready to go. Got new engine mounts. Got the fuel pump and stuff for the Sniper plumbed in. So we're sitting pretty good there. There's going to be some work. I do have to bend fuel lines and stuff that run up the motor. They used to come up to the fuel pump, come around the front. We'll see how we want to run them. The existing clips are a little small, so we got some work to do there. But otherwise, feeling pretty good. Nice to have everything... Schmudge. Nice to have everything buttoned up. So, anywho, thanks for riding along. We will catch you on the next one. Hopefully we'll have this back at its home. See you later.